Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's just jump right into things, because today we're exploring a truly fascinating piece of intellectual history. I want you to imagine for a second that I'm handing you two ancient lamps. Now, both of these lamps claim to light up the exact same darkness. They both promise that the everyday world you and I experience, well, it isn't the whole truth. Behind the veil of all this ordinary day-to-day stuff, there lies a hidden order. But here's the catch. These two lamps burn with completely different light. One basically tells you the world is a giant mistake that you desperately need to escape, while the other tells you the world is a divine reflection that you actually need to embrace. Today, we're going to look at these two ancient philosophies, Gnosticism and Hermeticism, and uncover how both of them have been quietly burning inside the architecture of Masonic thought right from its speculative beginnings.
So, here is a quick roadmap for our explainer today. First up, the two ancient lamps. Then, Gnosticism, the cosmic prison. After that, Hermeticism, the living mirror. Then we'll be comparing the two paths, and finally we'll wrap up with the Masonic synthesis.
All right, part one, the two ancient lamps. Think about this. What if everyday reality is just an illusion? You see, both Gnosticism and Hermeticism start with that exact same premise. The visible world simply isn't everything. They both insist that finding saving knowledge isn't about mere belief. It actually requires a direct, deeply personal encounter with a hidden truth. But while they totally agree on the problem, which is that we're all asleep to the true nature of reality, they offer completely opposite, honestly radical solutions for what you should do once you finally wake up.
So on one side, you've got this view that the world is a prison. This lamp is telling you that matter itself is the problem. It degrades and hides the spirit, and your only goal is to escape it entirely. But then, on the other side, we have the view that the world is a mirror. This lamp says matter is actually the visible face of the divine, and the way home isn't to run away, but to learn how to read the world correctly.
Moving on to part two, Gnosticism, the cosmic prison. To really get Gnosticism, you have to look at its wild, dramatic history. It emerged between the 1st and 3rd centuries, and it wasn't just one unified movement. It was more like a family of different sects like the Valentinians and Sethians. Now, for centuries, this worldview was heavily suppressed as heresy. Literally, for the longest time, we only really knew about it through the writings of the people who hated it, like Irenaeus of Lyon. But then, this incredible thing happened in 1945 over in Egypt. A collection of texts called the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered. All of a sudden, writings like the Gospel of Thomas and the Apocryphon of John gave the Gnostics their own voice back. It finally let us read the radical ideas in their own words.
So, at the very heart of Gnostic teaching is essentially the story of a massive cosmic accident. They believed the true God, who is pure spirit, totally unknowable, did not make our universe. Instead, they claimed the material world was engineered by this lesser being called the demiurge. Honestly, think of him like a wildly incompetent cosmic contractor who built a seriously flawed house and somehow convinced himself he was the supreme architect of it all. In this view, the cosmos isn't just good but fallen. No, the cosmos is the mistake.
So where does that leave us? Well, trapped inside this material prison, trapped inside these physical bodies, is what they call the pneuma. It's a hidden, literal spark of the true divine. And the real tragedy here? Most people live their entire lives completely oblivious to this spark. It's kind of like carrying a priceless diamond in your pocket, but going your whole life thinking it's just a piece of gravel. People live and die entirely inside the demiurge's illusion, completely mistaking the prison for the whole of reality.
Because of that, salvation isn't a matter of, just having faith or behaving nicely. It's all about gnosis. This isn't book learning. We're talking about a sudden, direct awakening knowledge of who you actually are, where you originally came from, and how to break out of this material prison to get back to the true divine fullness, which they call the pleroma. That's exactly why Gnosticism is so often labeled an anti-cosmic worldview. You don't try to fix or redeem the world, you wake up and you get out.
Which brings us to part three, Hermeticism, the living mirror.
Now, much like Gnosticism, the core texts of Hermetism, primarily the Corpus Hermeticum, were written in the Greco-Egyptian world right around the 1st to 3rd centuries. And again, just like Gnosticism, it was almost completely lost to the West during the Dark Ages. But it miraculously survived. Jump to 1463, and this brilliant scholar named Marsilio Ficino translates the Corpus Hermeticum for the incredibly powerful Cosimo de' Medici. Fun fact, this translation was considered so urgently important that Ficino actually paused translating Plato just to finish it. That translation acted like a match that lit the fuse for the entire Renaissance esoteric explosion, heavily influencing heavy hitters like Giordano Bruno.
Now, Hermetism starts from almost the exact opposite premise of Gnosticism. To a Hermetist, the cosmos is absolutely, definitely not a mistake. Instead, it is a living, perfectly ordered whole that emanates directly from the nous, which is a single divine mind. Everything in the universe, right down to physical matter, carries the perfect fingerprint of that divine mind. It is a very pro-cosmic perspective.
And that brings us to perhaps the most famous saying in this whole tradition, pulled right from the Emerald Tablet, as above, so below. Basically, this means that whatever happens in the unseen divine order is directly mirrored right here in the visible world. And humanity? Man is considered a microcosm. We're a miniature reflection of the whole universe, standing right at the crucial hinge point between spirit and matter.
So because the world is a mirror, and honestly a classroom, the path forward isn't to escape. The path is participation. Step 1, you have to wake up. Step 2, you must learn how to read the cosmic order. And step 3, you align yourself with it. The Hermetic texts actually describe the soul climbing back up through these planetary spheres, shedding all the negative, distorting influences at every single step until you finally realize the God that is already latent within you. You don't leave the world to perfect yourself, you perfect yourself within it.
All right, part 4, comparing the two paths. When we really boil it down, the stark difference is staring us right in the face. Gnosticism is anti-cosmic. The message is simple: wake up and leave. The world's a trap. Hermeticism is pro-cosmic. Its message is wake up and align. The world is this beautifully designed tool for your own perfection.
Let's actually look at how these diverge across a few dimensions, because this contrast is where the real aha moments happen. Take their view of matter. For the Gnostic, it's a prison hiding the spirit. For the Hermeticist, it's a mirror revealing the spirit. What about the human condition? To a Gnostic, we're a trapped spark surrounded by ignorance. To a Hermeticist, we're a microcosm just bursting with latent divinity, waiting to be realized. Liberation for the Gnostic is this sudden awakening shock that you don't belong here. But for the Hermeticist, it's an ordered, structured knowledge that brings you into alignment with the cosmos. So it's basically the metaphor of the prison and the spark versus the mirror and the ladder.
And that brings us to part 5, the Masonic synthesis.
So how does all this tie together? Well, Hermetism provided the direct structural architecture of speculative Masonry. Ficino's 1463 translation didn't just collect dust in a library. It fueled the Rosicrucian manifestos of the 1600s, and that directly shaped speculative Freemasonry over in Britain. Think about it, the lodge itself is built entirely on Hermetic principles. It perfectly mimics cosmic order. When you look at the checkered pavement, or the pillars, or the winding stair, you are literally looking at a physical structure that is meant to be read as a mirror, as above, so below. Even the transformation of the rough ashlar into the perfect ashlar perfectly echoes the alchemical great work, where matter is perfected, not thrown away. And that central demand to know thyself, it maps perfectly onto Hermetic philosophy. But if Hermeticism provides the architecture, Gnosticism provides what we could honestly call the scent, the thematic urgency of the craft. And we see this most powerfully in the concept of the lost word. The craft insists that a man can walk through his entire life completely asleep, mistaking the ordinary for reality. And the kicker, no one can just hand him wakefulness or saving knowledge. He has to go out and look for it himself through personal initiatic experience. The truth isn't just lost and forgotten. It is lost and must be sought. That right there is a deeply, deeply Gnostic thematic resonance.
Now, I do need to make a quick but super important scholarly distinction here. Claims that there's some unbroken esoteric lineage running directly from ancient 2nd century Gnostic sects all the way into 18th century Masonry? Yeah, those are heavily contested by historians. I mean, remember, the Nag Hammadi texts weren't even pulled out of the dirt until 1945. So while Hermeticism has a very clear documentable transmission chain straight through the Renaissance, Gnosticism's influence is much better understood as a shared instinct. It's a thematic resonance that pops up because both traditions are wrestling with the exact same human problem. We forget who we are, and we have to go looking for the truth.
Which brings us right to our conclusion. So, which of these lamps does the craft actually carry? Well, the answer is both. From Hermeticism, it inherits this firm conviction that the visible world is a school for the soul, a mirror you are meant to work with and perfect. And from Gnosticism, it inherits the intense urgency that you are currently asleep and you absolutely must awaken through a personal search. Put them both together, and you get this beautiful summarizing thought. The light was never withheld from you. It was only ever waiting to be sought. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In your own day-to-day life, are you looking at the world around you as a prison to escape or a mirror to master? Which lamp are you going to use to light your path?